Take your dirty hands off that glass. The voice sliced through the genteel hum of conversation like a dropped plate on marble. In the opulent dining room of the Corinthian, a restaurant known for its starched linen and hushed exclusivity in the heart of Iridia City, every head turned. The head waiter, Caleb, stood rigid, his hand hovering over a half-empty water glass. In front of him, an elderly man with a face like a roadmap of a hard-lived life was looking at him with steady, tired eyes. I said, "This is not a shelter," Caleb continued, his tone louder now, designed to be heard by the patrons. "We don't serve your kind here. You want water? The street fountain is that way." The old man, his worn tweed jacket a stark contrast to the polished mahogany, simply blinked. His hand, calloused and thick-knuckled, remained on the glass. He had not said a word. He just wanted a moment's rest and a simple glass of water before continuing his walk. Then came the crack that broke the silence. Caleb, his face twisted in a sneer of disgust and entitlement, raised his hand and slapped the old man across the cheek. The sound was sharp, brutal, and entirely unexpected. It resonated through the room, a physical shockwave that left every diner frozen in place. The old man, Colonel Anya Thorne, didn't flinch. He just slowly and deliberately set the water glass down on the table, as if placing a fragile, forgotten memory back in its place. The red mark on his cheek bloomed like a violent flower. Caleb, emboldened by the silent capitulation, scoffed and stormed off toward the kitchen, muttering something about the gall of entitled vagrants. Around the room, people shifted uncomfortably, a collective gasp of disbelief, now a wave of nervous coughing and clinking silverware. A young server, Chloe, her apron still pristine, shot a glance toward the manager's office, her eyes wide with fear and silent apology. But no one moved to help. No one dared to defy the unspoken hierarchy of the Corinthian, a place where appearances were everything. Elias remained still, his focus on the glass. His hand, now resting in his pocket, found a cold, heavy object. It was a tarnished combat medal from the Tarsus campaign of '93. Its ribbon was frayed and faded, but the weight of it still pressed into his palm, a physical manifestation of a past that refused to stay buried. He remembered a dusty camp, the oppressive heat, and his younger brother, Silas, who never made it back. The memory was a ghost that haunted him, a price paid for a country that, at this moment, felt very far away. He nodded once to the concerned young waitress, a gesture of quiet reassurance. It was then that she walked through the doors. She was a storm wrapped in a silk blazer, her heels clicking a rhythmic, determined beat on the tile. Anya Thorne moved with the quiet authority of someone who had seen it all and been fazed by none of it. She was headed directly for a corner booth, her mind on the legal brief she had to finalize later that night. She was completely unaware that the man she had just been seated was her husband, or that he had just been assaulted. But the room knew her. A few diners rose to their feet in a sign of respect. A prominent local politician whispered her name to his wife. Caleb, oblivious, leaned over to a fellow waiter. "You'd think the governor just walked in," he sneered, loud enough to be heard across a few tables. "Hope she knows we don't serve strays, no matter how well-dressed they are." Anya stopped mid-stride. Her head turned, her eyes, sharp and intelligent, flicked to Elias, then to the angry red mark on his cheek. The rhythmic click of her heels ceased, and the entire restaurant seemed to drop 10 degrees. The next thing that came out her mouth was not a question or a scream, but a statement of absolute fact, her voice low and cutting through the silence. "Officer," she said, addressing one of the two men in a nearby corner booth, two men who had just been enjoying a quiet dinner in plain clothes. "That man you just struck is Colonel Anya Thorne, a decorated combat veteran. And I am Judge Anya Thorne of the Elysian Circuit Court." Caleb's smirk evaporated. The color drained from his face, leaving it ashen and slack. The waiter he had just been talking to dropped his tray, the sound of breaking glass shattering the profound stillness. "You've assaulted a decorated veteran," Anya continued, her voice gaining momentum, "and you did it while he was under surveillance." She pulled a small leather folder from her briefcase, its pages containing not a legal brief, but the details of a case study on public decorum and a note from a friend at the police department about 2 off-duty officers in the area for a dinner. She was bluffing, but the conviction in her voice made it reality. "For my safety," she finished, a subtle but devastating addition to the lie. Gasps rippled through the room. Elias, who had remained seated, finally spoke. His voice was a low rumble, devoid of anger. "No need to press charges just yet," he said, and all eyes turned to him. "Maybe you should tell your guest what he thinks of men who fought for the freedoms he profits from." Caleb's face twisted in horror. I didn't know," he stammered, his bravado utterly gone. "That's the problem." Anya cut in, her voice firm. "You never cared to ask." At that moment, the 2 off-duty officers, now identified, rose from their booth. Officer Davies, a large man with a calm expression, walked to the main entrance and quietly locked the front door. He then stood with his hand on his belt, his posture a silent command. "Until this is documented," he said, his voice flat. Caleb stumbled backward, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. "You can't do this. This is just a misunderstanding." Anya tilted her head, a grim smile playing on her lips. "No," she said. "This is what justice looks like when it doesn't wait for a courtroom." But it wasn't over. Elias rose slowly from his seat, like thunder rising beneath the floorboards. He reached into his coat and pulled out the tarnished metal, placing it silently on the counter. "Do you know what this is?" he asked, his voice low and guttural, not addressing Caleb, but the room at large. He didn't wait for an answer. "I earned this fighting for a country that still lets men like you see me as less than human." Caleb opened his mouth, but Anya snapped, "You've said enough." Then something unexpected happened. The young server, Chloe, her eyes shining with unshed tears, stepped forward. She untied her apron, placed it on the counter with a soft thud, and looked at Caleb. "I'm done," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I won't work somewhere that treats people like this." Another server followed, then another. In a matter of minutes, the kitchen doors swung open and half the staff walked out, leaving their aprons in a pile on the floor. Caleb stood alone, sweating and pale, surrounded by a justice that didn't shout. It stood in silent rebellion. When Elias picked up his medal again, he didn't put it back in his pocket. Instead, he walked over to Chloe and placed the cold, heavy medal in her hand. The girl looked down at it, her eyes wide. "But I don't deserve this," she whispered. "You do now," Elias replied, his tired eyes holding hers. "It's not about the war. It's about what you chose to stand for." As Caleb was led out in handcuffs, his crumpled name tag still clutched in his hand, the dining room remained quiet. Anya took her husband's arm, and they walked out together, not saying another word. On the table where the medal had once sat, the only thing left behind was Caleb's name tag, bent in the middle, snapped at the edge. The loudest justice is often the one that leaves something broken behind.